7 seconds.
It says OBS suit just okay.
7 seconds.
All right. All right, looks like we're on. Hey everybody, it's Frankie-Lou. I'm coming to you today from the Greenhouse in the Sky, where I hope I'm going to get some of you joining in and asking your questions about milk jug planting. That's what the focus is for today because it is February 15th, which is the start of milk jug planting season if you are living in the Chinook zone. I've been doing some of my hardy perennials here at the Golden Greenstead. Well, here at the Golden Homestead because we don't face Chinooks here. But I know that a lot of you are coming from the Calgary area, and other areas that are affected by Chinooks. So this would be a good start date today if you're going to do it from there. Have you connected? It doesn't look because we don't face Chinooks here, but I know that a lot of you are. Okay, so I'm going to show you here, and hopefully we'll get some questions soon. I'm going to show you here how to prepare, first off, how to prepare a milk jug for milk jug planting. First of all, when you, I get this question, this is a question I probably get asked most. Do I leave my caps on or off? When you actually place your milk jug out in the snowbank, you need to have these lids off, okay? But for this first part of preparing the milk jug, you actually want to keep it on because I find that as I'm poking the holes, the drainage holes in the bottom here, having the lid on helps to stop the milk jug from collapsing while I'm doing it. So I am using, this is the tool that I've been using for years to do this. I'm going to poke 3 holes in each quadrant of my milk jug at the bottom here. Now, milk jug planting isn't something I came up with. It actually was invented several years ago by somebody named Trudy Davidoff down in the US, and it's been used by people all over the world for a long time. I've just adapted some of the techniques in order to make it so that we can use it in a Zone 3 habitat. Here, both of the homesteads that I plant on are Zone 3. And that is that's a pretty harsh conditions. And so there are a few amendments I've had to make in order to make this work. I have been playing with this method for Angus and I tried to figure this out the other day. We think it's 6 years now, and we've been having a lot of success with it. We love it. And I actually have found that it's made it possible for me to every single year expand my garden beds on both homesteads. There is absolutely no way I would be able to plant enough stuff to fill 2 homesteads worth um, of seedlings if I didn't do this, because there's lots of reasons why I love doing this. Number one, I get a better product in the end. It is Milk jug planting is a way of having Mother Nature do all that heavy lifting for you. You cannot replicate the sun. There's a lot of different lighting companies that have attempted to, and there's great products out there. And we actually do use some of those in the greenhouse, but you can't replicate the amazing light that you get from the sun. So having these outside where the sun, sorry, my technical help here. That's John, by the way. Angus is away. So I apologize in advance for any of the technical difficulties because my brilliant 16-year-old son is not here and he's the one who usually does all this for me. I am much better with dirt than I am with technology, so please be patient with me if you do notice some issues going on. Also, make sure that you do let me know your questions in the chat so I can keep up with you. If you do have questions, I really am here to answer those today more than anything. So We've got the holes plugged. Why? Oh, sorry. I'm going to go back to why I'm doing this. Better product. By having this outside as it would be in nature, I am going to get a better product in the end. What happens is by having this filled with seeds and having it placed in a snowbank, these seeds are going to be cold stratified. And what happens there is that is a natural process because seeds have a very, very hard seed coat on it. And often you can't you might notice when you buy some of your seeds it says nick or soak in water or place in a refrigerator for 4 days. These are all things that are done in order to stratify seeds, but by putting in the milk jugs you don't need to do any of that. It is going to stratify those seeds. Not every single seed requires stratification. um, the ones that do tend to be the hardy perennials. So that is for those people who are afraid to do this and afraid that it's not going to work. That is the seeds I would recommend that you go for first. Okay. So what are hardy perennials? Well, today, while I'm doing this demo here, chives, fantastic hardy perennial. It's edible. Plus, it also brings a pollinator to your garden. They love chive flower. They absolutely love chive flowers. And it'll come back year after year after year. And it can exist even in harsh zone 3 environments. Another one I would like to do is echinacea. This may not flower the first year. I've had it flower sometimes, but usually it's something that's going to flower the second year, which is something that often does occur with hardy perennials. They often don't flower the first year. Hyssop or licorice mint. This is another this is another pollinator favorite, and it's great for teas, and it'll bring those pollinators to your garden. It's got a licorice mint flavor. Another one that I absolutely adore that's an edible hardy perennial for zone 3 is lovage. If you have not tried lovage yet, I really recommend that you do that because it's amazing. It's got a really tart lemony taste, and there's lots of ways you can use it in both cooked and raw. And it's something that once you get started in your garden, you probably will want to use over and over and over again. And it'll come back over and over and over again. So there you go. I've also got bergamot, another pollinator favorite. Bees love this stuff. The other name for it is bee balm for very good reason. Bees do tend to go for it. And another example of a hardy perennial is this farm of lavender. I get this asked this a whole heck of a lot. What is a lavender that's going to exist in zone 3? And there really are only two that I've found that come back repeatedly, Munstead and Hidcote. All those beautiful French lavenders and English lavenders are not going to exist, are not going to return year after year in zone 3. But if you work with Munstead and Hidcote, I'm sure I'm saying that's wrong. You can get it back year after year. And I found that the best way to get it to work is in this, okay, the milk jug planting, because these are all things that need cold stratification. That's one of the reasons why we want to do the milk jug planting. One of the fallacies that I see coming up over and over again is people expecting to see stuff coming that I get literally asked on the daily. Well, why are you putting out in the snowbank? Our cold temperatures are there's no way it's going to grow. And of course, it's not going to grow. It's not going to grow at first. It's going to cold stratify. It's going to sit there. Mother Nature's going to do her little magic, and that germination is going to start to take place when it should take place, which is in spring. Now, here I'm in Golden here today, and also in Springbank. These are both zone 3. Spring is not coming anytime soon. All right. I'm not going to see things poking up out of the soil here for several months, which is fine. Okay. That's one of the reasons I do this. I am going to have hundreds of jugs out in the snowbank before the end of the season. And if I tried to do all that planting at once, I'd lose my mind. I would not have time to do anything else. But by staggering the season out this way, by placing things in the snowbanks a little bit off, a little bit at a time, I'm saving myself a lot of work. Okay. Well, I see that somebody, no, be sure. I thought I got a question there on chat. Please, the reason I'm here today, because I have published a ton of videos, but I would love to hear your questions. So if you do have a questions, please do make sure to put it in the chat for me, okay? All right. So I am going to, so I've got what the steps for the milk jug planting. I have got the whole bunch of drainage holes poked in here. When I have had my milk jug planting fail, the number one reason is because I forgot to plug in these drainage holes. Now I am going to cut my milk jug. Here we go. See, about halfway here. And I basically start the cut just below the handle here. And now it's hinged. Okay. Now I can take this off. I just find that sometimes these will collapse if I don't do that in advance. So now that I've taken this off, this is open. Now, what I need to do is put in soil. So as with all seed starting, you want to have a pre-moistened soil because in order for stratification to occur, you have to have both cold and you also have to have moisture. Okay, so I have got myself here a very well moistened soil. You want it to be coming together. We're also going to place these milk jugs out in a snowbank where it's going to be exposed to both snow and rain later on in the season because we want to have that precipitation coming in. Okay. So I've got now another question I get asked a lot is what kind of soil do you use? My favorite soil, hands down, and I'm not being they haven't given me any endorsements or anything. I'm just saying this because over the years, this is the product that's used that has definitely worked best for me, and that's the Pro Mix. Oh, the bag is little. That's the Pro Mix Hardy and organic herb and veggie mix. This is the one that works best. Everything I grow is edible. That's one of the weird things I do. I grow a lot of flowers, but only edible flowers or flowers that can be used for medicinal properties. So that's the one I recommend. The other Pro Mix, if you're just growing flowers for beauty and for bringing in your pollinators, you could also get away with using some of the other Pro Mix blends. One of the reasons I like the Pro Mix is because it includes mycorrhiza, and the mycorrhiza I find makes a huge difference. Oh, I've got a question here. I just want to, oh, hi, Jennifer. I hope you're doing good. I love my bergamot. Yes, bergamot is wonderful. Ooh, if you are going to grow bergamot and you love the taste of Earl Grey tea, now this isn't the bergamot that goes into Earl Grey tea. It is actually a herb, whereas the bergamot in Earl Grey tea is a citrus fruit. It does have that really tangy taste. So if you haven't grown bergamot before and you like bees, get that bergamot in there, okay, into your hardy edible perennial garden. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to fill this milk jug with some really nicely pre-moistened soil. And as I said, the ProMix does inoculate with a mycorrhiza, which is basically a symbiotic form of fungi, which attaches to the roots of the plants, and it's better for nutrition exchange. If you watch my channel, you'll see over and over and over again, I'm always talking about amping up the natural soil biodiversity because it's all those wonderful little microbes and things like mycorrhiza that help to feed our soil, and it also makes our plants more resilient. We often face in Alberta, at my other homestead, drought conditions, and I get asked all the time, oh, what am I going to do about drought? The number one thing you can do about drought is maintain healthy soil. Okay. If you have lots of fungi in your soil, if you're maintaining that healthy biodiversity, that's going to help feed your soil. So keeping mulch on, because mulch helps to do that, is a great thing to do as well. So I am going to put some lavender in there. That is one of Angus's favorites, so that's one of the reasons I like to do it. And I'm also, it's a bee favorite, and it smells great. Okay, I've got two gardens I need to fill, so there's no such thing as too much lavender. But when it comes to milk jug planting, there is such a thing as overplanting. One of the things that people do their first time is they believe there's no way this is ever going to work. So they sprinkle a whole pack of seeds into one milk jug. That's not going to work because what happens is you get a better germination rate with this cold stratified, especially with your hardy perennials, than you would with doing under lights inside. And so what you want to do is you want to do a light sprinkling. Okay. You also don't want to bury the seeds too deep with lavender because the seeds are quite small. I'm just going to do a very light sprinkling on top and I'm just going to press them in. Okay. Oh, I'm just going to press it in just a little bit and put a nice little light layer on top. You want to make sure that your seeds have got good contact with that moist soil. Okay. Putting that on. All right. Pre-moistened soil, as I said, essential. Now, another essential part is labeling this correctly because those of us who have done this before have often had to play the mystery plant game in spring when it comes time to transplant. So one of the things I would recommend you don't do, and I did in my initial videos when Angus and I were first starting with this method, is Sharpie markers for doing the labeling on the outside. This will disappear very rapidly, and you may be playing the what is this mystery seedling here in this jug, especially if you've got like 50 to 100 jugs outside. Having having it labeled incorrectly on the bottom on the outside is not, or having that label disappear is not going to be helpful. um, I like to use when I don't have one right here, but one of the things that I found works best is the ear tag markers that you can get at most feed stores for cattle. That marker will last on plastic through pretty much anything. So if you can get a hold of those, get those. Otherwise, I do find the second best product that I use is those basically acrylic paint pens that you can get at Michael's or any other craft store. So the other thing that I do is I actually make my little tags in advance because I'm going to be transplanting hundreds and hundreds of seedlings in the spring when it's time to move it out. And I'm not going to have time to make tags. So why not do it now? I cut them out of yogurt containers. There's videos about that. If you haven't seen it, it's very simple to do. But this is sort of something that I do that solves two problems because when I started doing this, I found that like probably about half the time, one of the seedlings would end up going up into the handle and then I'd end up breaking it when I opened it. So if I make my tag, I'm going to just do it right now. And I'm going to put this as lavender, which I'm sure I'll spell wrong. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that up into the handle. So there's two reasons I do that. Number one, I can now see that it says lavender on the outside. So no matter what happens to the labeling that I do on the outside, that is going to stay there and so that I can see it on the outside no matter what. And now it's plugging the way for any of my seedlings to go up in there. So that's a little tip that I sort of developed that I'm really happy I did because I've broken less seedlings opening up the jugs when it's time. You can always know exactly what's on there. I'm going to tape it up. I am using a good quality duct tape. I don't like to use, and this is not a slam against this product because it's actually too good. The Gorilla brand duct tape is too strong. Okay, it actually I can't get it open. I've had to cut it open to get it open. And dollar store duct tape is too weak. I go to Canadian Tire. I have a few different ones that I use. You don't want to cheap out on your duct tape. You do want to get a decent quality duct tape when you're doing this. Now, I've have a very lovely viewer who told me the other day that she got very concerned by seeing me cut this with my teeth, and she's right. I shouldn't do that. I'm going to do it because we don't want to be ingesting all of those terrible toxins. And I can't believe I never thought of that before. So thank you for mentioning that to me the other day. And I'm going to take this up really well. Oh, I see I've got another comment here. Kind of old story. I'm just going to go up a bit. It's from Jennifer again for me to use as markers. Oh, yes, the Venetian blinds. They work as well. That's an excellent point. Jennifer, I'm sorry. I'm going to call you Jen. I can't call you Jennifer. Uh, the Venetian blinds are awesome. That's another upcycling thing that you can do. Using Venetian blinds as a tag is also a really great thing to do. Okay, so I'm going to make sure, you know what? It's too cold in here right now. We had to turn off the fans in here in our geothermal greenhouse so that you guys could hear me talk today. And it's too cold for the tape too. I'm not going to even try to fake this. You want to make sure that you're not doing your taping outside where it's cold because it won't stick. So you want to make sure that your tape is nice and warm when you go to use it. I know that that doesn't make sense because you're going to put it out in the snow. It's that initial contact you want it to be warm. I'm also am going to label on it that I'm putting lavender. Okay. And I usually put the date on. Now, the reason why I always date this is because I update my data year after year after year so that I can ensure that I'm giving the best advice. Often what I'll do when I'm planting something new is I will plant it at 3 different times and see which one's getting the best result. And that is how we came up with the wonderful charts. If you're in winter sowing and you're in zone 3 or on the prairies, I do recommend that you join the Facebook group, the Winter Sowing Milk Jug Planting, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. Although we take anybody in Zone 3, anybody who lives in a harsh condition, because that's where we got the data for those charts, where we make recommendations about when to plant different stuff. It wasn't just me who came up with this. What my dear friend Lorraine sat down with me one day, and that's how we started. She goes, "When do you plant this? When do you plant this? When do you plant this?" And then over the years, we've also taken the data from, we have 6,000 members in that group who are saying, you know what, I got better results when I planted this at this time, and I got better results. And people who plant stuff that I don't plant, I don't plant everything. Like I said, I plant mostly vegetables and edible herbs and flowers. People want to plant other things that they don't have to eat. And so if you join that group, you'll have access to those charts and you can actually input as well. We also try to help people with other strategies for growing in harsh conditions because this is wonderful. Mountainside living is wonderful. It can't be beat, but as a gardener it's also challenging, and so we try to come together, those of us who live in these harsher conditions on the Canadian prairies, in the American prairies, and actually we have some followers who are in Europe in zone 3 as well, and we all work together to come up with a lot of this data and we experiment together. Okay, so if you do want to be more involved in this and see how this can work in harsh conditions and other ways to plant, I would recommend joining that group. There's 3 of us who administer it, and we just love seeing all the amazing ideas that you guys come up with and all the questions that you come up with as well. So that's a very long ramble to explain why I put the date on. That is so I can compare data. I will plant lavender several different times. I'm putting one out today. I'll put another one out in another 2 weeks and another one out in another 2 weeks. And I'm going to see when it's growing best. Because this is a hardy perennial, this will probably be the best jug, the one that I'm putting out now. So that is one of the things. I'm just going to put that date in. It's the February 15th today, which is when I traditionally start doing winter sowing in Alberta. That's one of the things. The original person who came up with milk jug planting, Trudy Davidoff, she's is in a much less harsh conditions than we face here on the prairies. Okay, and we can't put out tender stuff for some time. And I found that where I started getting the most success is when I started staggering my planting into three different groups. Hardy perennials, if you don't live in a Chinook zone, you can start putting hardy perennials out basically at the beginning of winter, because if you're going to stay cold, if you're not going to have erratic temperature conditions and temperature changes, you can start those hardy perennials like basically January 1st if you wanted to. But if you live in a Chinook zone, like I do half the time, we get these really erratic temperature fluctuations. And what can happen is if you have several days in a row where it's actually warm, your seeds are going to germinate too soon. And then you'll have all these younger, sweet little seedlings up, and then it's going to go to minus 30 and all these seedlings would die. Because, yes, these milk jugs are great as a little mini greenhouse, but they have limitations, right? So basically, that is why I hold off and I do not plant outside with my milk jugs in the Chinook zone until now. Because those of you who have been through this winter in the Chinook zone near Calgary, it's been crazy. We've had lots of really warm weather, and then we've had lots of really cold weather. It's very cold at home right now. And if I had put jugs out on January 1st, some of them would have already germinated and now they'd be dead. Okay. So basically, by waiting until now, we're making sure that the seedlings are not going to start germinating too soon and coming up too soon to inevitably die when it goes down to minus 20. This lavender that I'm putting out today will not germinate for some time. Okay. And as I know that's confusing, but it's a really good thing that it's going to hold off. So I'm going to do some more jugs, but I'm going to talk about some of the other reasons why you might want to winter sow. As I said, my number one reason is because I get a better product. Some of the seedlings might look really small when it's time to put them in the ground, but because they're outside in jugs, they've already climatized to the conditions out here. So, those of you who have done a lot of planting and have gone through raising plants inside, you have to go through this very onerous um, process called hardening off. And I hate hardening off. I have killed more seedlings in the hardening off phase than through any other thing, because basically that's the process of taking seedlings that have been babied under lights inside and slowly acclimatizing them to harsh conditions. You start like with a half an hour the first day and then an hour the next day, and you slowly work your way up. If you have hundreds and hundreds of seedlings like I do, basically I used to dedicate hours every day to moving seedlings in and out of my growing space inside. I don't have to do any of that here. Okay. Another thing is I dropped a lot of those seedlings because I'm clumsy. You know, you're carrying those weak little trays and then they fall and you cry because you've killed some seedlings. But with these milk jugs, basically when it's time to plant them, about 2 or 3, I'd say minimum 2 days ahead of time, but sometimes I'll give it more time. I open this up. Basically, you want to wait till they get up to the top there. You open it up and you leave it in a place that isn't full on sun for a few days and it's ready to go into the ground. Oh, I see I have another. Are there any plants, vegetables that don't do well? Oh, yes. I am going to do a video about that as well, Jen. So I know you'd think that tomatoes and cucumbers and squash won't do well in winter sowing, but actually they can be done. It does take a cheat method. Okay. In zone 3, where I have found I've had the most successful with my tomatoes, cukes, and squash is I don't start them till April. And basically, I will put them outside in the milk jugs during the day when it's nice and warm, or and then bring them in at night. Yes, it is more work than traditional milk jug planting, but it still does work, and it's less than having to go through hardening off with a bunch of things. So I find that I have been able to do everything with milk jugs, even peppers. Last year, I successfully grew the best shishito peppers I've ever grown using milk jugs. Now the other thing is if you do have a greenhouse, even in a greenhouse here, like see this huge space, for a lot of plants, I still start them in the milk jugs because this is basically a humidity trapping chamber. And especially things I get asked all the time. Oh, I guess you can't do carrots. You can do carrots. I'm actually working on a new system right now where I think it's going to be great. I will definitely be posting about it as I experiment with it. But basically, the germination rate I get from carrots and beets because of this trapped humidity compared to what happens if I stick it outside, I'm getting a much higher germination rate. It's that carefully of moving it out of the jug and into the ground and separating them in advance. As I said, I am working on a new thing for that. I used to just cut the soil block up, but I think I have a way that I can do it and also upcycle something that I've already got going on. And I will make a video about that soon. It's not time to put carrots out though. I don't put carrots out into the ground until March. I start putting out those hardy vegetables, hardy annuals. I stick to just hardy perennials for until the end of March, until the end of February, sorry. And then I move on to hardy veg, hardy herbs, hardy annuals. Okay? Now I see that I've got something here. My experience when opening up the jugs, open them up at night before. Oh, okay. Yes, there is a humidity shock. Definitely. That's a good idea though. By opening them at night, that's actually a really good idea. That's from Carmen. That's an excellent idea because normally what I do is I do open it up and I put it somewhere where there's not an exposure to sunlight right away, and I allow them a couple days to get over the humidity shock because there is one. If it's warm enough at night, yeah, that's a really good idea, Carmen. Sticking them out so that they're, or somewhere where it's kind of humid and maybe moving it a little bit closer to where you want it to be when you're going to put it in the ground. That's the thing. But I find that having that slight humidity shock compared to the hardening off process is a huge difference. And if that was the only difference in um, traditional under light seed starting versus winter sowing starting, yeah, I would still do it. But I'm going to do that now, Carmen. I'm going to do some experiments because I experiment every year. I try to experiment and come up with different things. And I'm going to try opening some of the same plants in the middle of the day and some in the at night and see if there's a difference. And I bet you you're right. I bet you there will be. Okay, so other reasons to do it. I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of room in my house for shelving. Okay, and lights. And another thing is the watering. Oh my gosh. When I used to do lights and do seedlings inside, I so many times like I would want to go away for even a day or two, and if somebody didn't adjust the lights or didn't water, all my seedlings would die or they would get leggy because you have to like constantly be moving those seedlings so that they are not too far away from the lights. You don't have to worry about any of that with the milk jugs because it's actual sunlight, which is much more powerful than anything that you're going to be able to create um, in a lighting facility. So, yes, the sunlight is better. You don't have to worry about watering that often. I actually find that I do have to water, usually not for a couple of months, usually not until stuff has started to come up and the snow has melted. And then what I do is I walk around and I lift these up. And if they feel light, then I place them in a tray and I underwater. I find that if I try to water from the top, it sort of inundates the jug. The water gets on the side and all the seedlings that are on the edge get sort of slammed or too much water and nothing happens in the middle. So I found that the gentlest way to handle watering my young seedlings inside the jug is by placing it in a watering tray. Does that make sense? I usually, when I can, even with my house plants, I find they really like that soak up from the bottom versus watering from the top. Another thing about placement, um, it's a good idea to group them together as much as possible for several reasons. They will actually insulate each other from harsh temperature changes, especially we're still going to get a few Chinooks in Calgary. It won't be as crazy, but if they're grouped together, they're forming a thermal mass. All right. So they're going to maintain their temperature a lot better than if you have a whole bunch of little milk jugs randomly set out on their own. By the time I'm done out there, I will basically have a few hundred of them and they're going to be in a bank all together. All right. I also do like to place them somewhere where they will be protected from wind, but that they're going to be fully exposed to both sunlight and precipitation. A lot of people really want to shelter their milk jugs. They want to place them up against a house or underneath an eave or something like that. And if you do that, you're not going to allow that precipitation to come in. And that's essential. You want to have that lid open so that the snow can get in there and the rain in the spring. And if you have it up against a house, you may find that you don't get enough exposure and you're going to be watering more often. But that being said, let's say all you have is a balcony and it's covered. That does not mean you can't winter sow. I have lots of friends in Calgary who have been doing winter sowing on their little balconies every year. They just have to be more aware of how often their things need to be watered. You do not want to place, one of the things that I've noticed that a lot of balcony people do though, is they put this in a tray. And then if snow does come in or if water comes in, this becomes waterlogged. Okay. You need to make sure you place this somewhere where those drainage holes are going to be allowed to fully drain. Yes, you do pick this up and you do put it in a tray to water it, but you want to take it out of that tray when it's not actually actively being watered. Okay. Does that make sense? So, um, let me see. Placement. Uh, we've talked about hardening off and the lack of having to harden off. We've um, talked about watering. Okay, you're going to underwater. That's the best way to do it. Another thing I get asked a lot of questions about is what do I do if there's no snow? Because that can happen here. Especially in the Calgary area, you might find that for the whole month of March, there's basically no snow. It's not a huge concern unless you're finding that you're also getting a ton of sunlight and heat during the day, which is not likely to be too much of a case in the Calgary area or anywhere in zone 3. But what you can do is you can also create sort of so grouping them together is going to help with that because you do want it to stay frozen as long as it's supposed to be frozen. Another thing you can do is you can place a little circle of milk jugs that are filled with the lid on with water about halfway because that is once again creating more thermal mass. So if you have all of your milk jugs grouped together and then you kind of have a water barrier around it, milk jugs filled with water that will freeze. That will help to keep that thermal mass together so that they don't um, germinate too quickly. They don't emerge too quickly. It also, another thing, actually, the number one thing that I've found has been the biggest issue with most of the viewers when it comes to there being no snow is protecting from animals and from wind. You want to make sure that your dog is not going to pick it up and run around with it like it's a chew toy, because obviously that's not a good thing. And that, so if you have them all grouped together, some people actually bungee cord them together so that they can't be taken off as a mass. And also they're less likely to blow away that way. I do find that if I place them, I do have a lot of windy areas, especially in my Springbank homestead. So what I like to do is place them so that they are up against sort of a fence or up against the greenhouse here. I do that here, where they're going to be exposed to lots of sunlight. They're going to be exposed to lots of precipitation, but they're less likely to blow away, right? So let me just make sure that I've covered, we got stratification. Um, Now the other thing that people I get asked a lot about is it going to get too hot in here? I have, and some folks, if you don't live in zone 3, if you live somewhere where you got a lot more higher temperatures, you might find you got some benefit to putting some extra holes in the top. I have not had to do that myself, but if you live somewhere warmer, you might want to do that. Oh, I see I got another one here. Why does the lid have to be, mine don't. I only have 1 inch of snow right now. Okay, sorry. I can't see this because of the way my cursor is. Okay. Does the lid have to be on? No, no, the lid doesn't. The only reason I have the lid on, I've got a question here, is why does the lid have to be on? I actually don't leave the lid on when I put it out. I only leave the lid on when I'm punching the holes, because I find that having it so that the air isn't escaping, that it's not going to collapse as much. It's just something that I've noticed over the years. I find it's easier to poke the holes and cut with the lid on, and then I take it off when I do put it outside. Okay, because that way, sometimes, here, I can actually show you. Sometimes when you go to punch the holes and the lid is off, see how it's really collapsing in because the air is escaping. But if I put the lid on top of it, uh, it's just one of those fussy little things that after doing hundreds and hundreds of these, see, it doesn't collapse as much. It actually, the hole goes in easier. Just a simple little thing I've noticed that makes a big difference when I'm preparing hundreds of these. I don't have to worry about it collapsing up. Okay. Do I have anybody who has other questions they want to ask, or any questions about the geothermal greenhouse here? We actually had it up to 28 degrees, I believe it was in here today, and it's minus 10 degrees outside. So we are going to be doing, it's dark here now. We've got external lighting that we've put on so that we can do this today. But as the season progresses, and as I'm getting more stuff going in the ground here, we'll be doing more of the live feeds from here. We're going to try to do it every Saturday at 7. And I'll be able to show you some of the functions that are working here in the geothermal greenhouse. We also do a ton of upcycling, and I would love to hear some of your ideas. If you have ideas about how you can use some of the reuse some of the things on your own homestead, I love chatting about it. It's one of my favorite subjects. Also, if you're looking for ways of boosting the biodiversity in your garden, please do ask questions about that because I just love to talk about that. Oh, I see. Is it, is the greenhouse connected to your house? No, it's a freestanding building. It's actually huge in here. I believe that this main floor down here is 26 by 52, if I remember correctly. And then we also have 2 sea cans up against this wall here. There's one that's buried below the ground. and that's going to be the refrigerated unit. We haven't got that set up yet. We have a middle unit where will be mostly storage, and then there's also a top floor where we've added even more growing space up there. And yeah, it's huge. It's basically bigger than the house, but it's a house for plants. I swear to God, though, if I had my way, I'd just put a cot up there because I love it in here. It's just I wish you guys could smell it in here, considering that it's freezing outside, and to be able to come in here and smell that fresh growth in here, it's definitely good for boosting the dopamine in my body. All right, so no, it is not connected to the house. We eventually may find ways of implementing the systems together. The chicken coop is attached to it though, and that's been a huge benefit this year. We have a portable chicken coop on a trailer, and we booted it up to the side of the greenhouse here, and we're able to feed water and electricity and actually some of the air, so that the chickens are super comfortable this year. It's been a really amazing thing to do. Another thing we're doing on here is we're rigging it up with solar panels. We're basically driving air down into the battery bank that's below here. There's over 4,000, well, sorry, 4,000 or 400, 4,000 feet of piping underneath here that's maintaining that's keeping that's moving the air around. We're finding that fairly consistently. We're getting about 9 degrees pumped through here. So you can imagine that makes a big difference, right? If it's minus 20 outside, we can keep it above freezing in here because from down below the ground, we are also pumping up 9-degree air. We also do have for this year, while we're trying to figure out and tweak the systems, this was only the build on this to the point where we had a roof on it. It hasn't even been a year. We're still playing with all the different systems in here, but we're really pleased with how well it's done. We do have a wood fire that we've been burning in here on some of the colder days, but as we tweak each system, as we're learning, we're hoping that we won't need to rely on that very much. Actually, one of the things that I've found is my biggest learning from this is everything was growing so well here, even into late fall, that I couldn't bear to take it down. I just wanted to leave things growing because they all still look so beautiful and we were still pulling food. And I really have just got to be brutal and take those plants down in September so that they have enough time to really grow and flourish before the worst of the lack of sunlight comes on, because there are so few hours of sunlight when we're talking late October, November, December, January, February. So I've got to just be brutal, pull everything down early September, and start putting stuff in the ground then so that it goes. But we do have crops growing here. I've got a wonderful garlic and orash crop coming up here now. And so here's my plug for orash. If you haven't grown orash before and you live in a zone 3 environment, please do try it. It is basically the early cultivar for spinach, but it's bolt, frost, and drought resistant. So it's amazing. And even when it does bolt, when it does grow tall, and it grows as tall as I am, it's still edible, still tasty. So do keep an eye out for orash, because that's something that I would really recommend growing if you are in a harsh condition like this. All right, do we have any other questions here today? I'm here if you have any more. Also, this will be taped. If you weren't able to, or if you have friends who want to see some of this stuff, you can tune in and see the tape version later. All right, do we have any other questions? If not, I am going. So the floor you're standing on is below ground. Okay, that's an excellent question. I'm just going to make sure I can read it properly, Carmen. Um, Carmen is asking if the floor I'm standing on is below ground level. I'm looking at the door behind you. Oh, yes. Okay, that's an excellent question. No, this floor actually is at ground level. We have stairs going up, though, to the second level, and then coming down to here. So what we're standing on right now um, is basically there was a huge hole that was dug, and we placed one sea can down inside of it. Okay, so you can't really see the sea can here from this view. We will give more details on that in later dates. And then basically we buried it and made a space because we're gonna do a we are gonna plant also in between the two sea cans. There's about a almost 3 foot space, I would say, between the two sea cans. And this door behind me here is leading to the an office space that we have out there. And basically we go up and down. But this is pretty close to floor level. We have, you can see next to the door over here, that's a garage door. And when we open that up, and there's another one on the other side, those are at ground level. And the one on the other side, that's so we can eventually actually drive the tractor right into here. And it's also been great for being able to move large bulk loads and having a garage door that opens. Another reason it's great to have those garage doors is because having it open and having the breeze through has been amazing. So I don't know if some of you have had greenhouses. One of the biggest places where they can fail is when there isn't enough air going through it, enough ventilation. So by having this breeze through on either side, the pollinators come in. I get hummingbirds in here. I get frogs in here. It's wonderful. Um, and there's the good airflow. And then the geothermal energy that's pumping through the geothermal air with its 9 degrees helps to keep it much cooler. It's way more comfortable in here in the middle of the summer. It's usually around 25 degrees and it could be 30 degrees outside. But because I have the breeze through and because we also have the geothermal air pumping through here, it really helps. So thank you for that question. I know it looks like I'm subterranean, but I'm not actually. We are at ground level here. I will, if you do see the videos, it's actually a 3-story building. It's quite huge. Were there any other questions about that or um, maybe compost? Talking about compost, and I'll do a whole other video about that later. But if we have any other questions before we sign off here, okay, raised beds. Are they full of soil or did you fill the bottom with other material? Okay, so the raised beds, these are wonderful. These are actually upcycled. They what they are is actually guardrails from Parks Canada, basically. From the highway. Um, they they were from a scrap metal yard, and we built it on that. We've loved them because we know they're not going to rot. But yes, there is a lot of soil in there. What we did though is we actually did something kind of different. This is a unique design that we've implemented where we don't just have pipes running underneath the ground. We actually have geothermal air running through the beds themselves. We have implemented piping right in the beds. That was done in the solar roller. I don't know if any of you have followed that, which was a wonderful project I was involved with in a couple of years in Cochrane, an educational portable greenhouse. And they had piping running because they couldn't be a geothermal greenhouse. It was portable. But they wanted to demonstrate the idea. So they had the piping running through the beds. So we've done both here. We've done both tapping into the ground energy, and we also run the air through the beds themselves. So basically, what we've done is there's a lot of sort of plant matter underneath the pipe, and then it's basically soil on top of that. But we wanted the pipe to be running on something that was a little more stable. So there's lots of sort of wood and stuff in there. And we do know that as that rots, we'll have to put more soil into each of these beds every year. That's something that is really essential. I practice a no dig, no tilling kind of practice here, but every year I know with the raised beds, I will have to continue to add more soil to it every year. One of the things that I really try to do here is not compact the soil because man, these are tall beds. If somebody puts a foot in there and presses and stands in a spot for any amount of time, the soil sinks down, crushing the wonderful mycelium that runs around in there. So that's one of the things you want to do with raised bed gardening is you always want to make sure that you have planks that you can stand on, not on the soil itself, because you don't want to compress the soil because boy, raised beds can lower really quickly if you're compacting that soil. And I have to add to it every year. Okay, we have huge compost bins, and we've we we make a lot of new soil every year so that we can continue to build on these. Any other questions about that? Good. I really appreciate that you guys are asking these things because they're things I love to chat about. And that's another thing. The channel does have tons and tons and tons of videos. Please do send questions though, because that helps me to determine what I should make questions about. Jen had mentioned earlier she wanted to see a video about what can't be done. And I had a lot of fun playing with that one, and I can't wait to make a video about that next week because I honestly believe that nothing is impossible once you start using these wonderful little milk jugs. Okay, is if we are closing up here, we're getting close to the hour mark. So if you do have any questions, please do shoot them to me now. Otherwise, as I said, you can comment on any of my videos and I do get notifications and I would be happy to answer those questions for you if they come in to me. Okay. But it sounds like we are almost at the end here. Another thing I had mentioned about the timing, what I would suggest is, so let's take the timing as we're closing out, just so that you know, now is a good time to get those hardy perennials out, no matter where you are. Okay, if you're in a zone 3 environment, now is a great time to get out your hardy perennials, and you can continue planting those to the end of July, end of um, February. You actually can continue planting those well into March because there's still enough time. Oh, I see another one. Thank you for your time. Oh, thank you, Carmen. I really appreciate your input. And I can't wait to experiment with yeah, I love it when people give me other things to try out. I'm really looking forward to trying out doing the milk jugs, opening them at night and during the day. And there's another one here. Oh, okay, and that's another thing. Right now, I look forward to doing another one of these. The next episode is actually going to be at the other homestead in Springbank, because I have to be there for Angus on next Saturday. So hopefully, you guys can see that too. It is actually a straw bale home, so it's kind of cool. And then vermicompost, could you do a video about that? Yes, I definitely can do a video about vermicomposting. There are a couple already on the channel, but as I'm amping up for the spring, we are going to be revamping our vermicompost, and it is wonderful stuff. Not just because it adds nutrition to the soil, but the same way we have probiotics in our stomach to help us to digest food, worms have probiotics in their stomach too. So people are always like, oh, this stuff is black gold. And it is, because not only is it making the nutrition more soluble, it's also adding the biodiversity to the soil. Soil is alive, soil is not a dead thing. And by um, basically, that vermicompost helps to build up the nutrition in your soil and the biodiversity. I'd like to hear about your composting setup too. Yes, of course. I love you guys are in trouble because I could talk about compost forever. I studied archaeology, so rotting is I'm really into it. And we're actually one of the things our goals is to set up a compost bin right here in the greenhouse. And so we'll be able to show you some of that. Plus, we'll have the vermicompost in here. So we'll have a standard compost bin as well as a vermicompost bin. So yes, I'm not going to have time to talk too much about that today. There are a couple of videos about it, but that will definitely be one of the next sessions on the lives because we'll have one right in here to work with and show you. Any other ones that No, not today. Okay, well, thank you so much for tuning in. I've really enjoyed this. And if you have other things that you would like me to cover on these live sessions, let me know. Please do check out the channel because a lot of this stuff well, just in case you haven't noticed, I can't stop talking about this stuff. So there's hundreds of videos that you can see covering a lot of these subjects. And as I said, I'm always happy to answer questions that you have on any of those. All right. So thank you so much for tuning in. We will do one again next Saturday. As I said, it'll be from the Grow Together Homestead in Alberta, which is a straw bale home. It's beautiful. It's really amazing. It's a little one-room cabin, but it's perfect for Angus and I. And thanks for tuning in. And as always, please take your chance to grow together today. Have a good one.